All right, hello and welcome to Leading with AI, where strategy and people meet. I'm excited to introduce Glenn Dahl, who's going to be presenting today. Glenn and I met, actually we met many years ago at an event, and then we reconnected recently in the Twin Cities at an Allied executive event, and we happened to be sitting next to each other and started talking about strategy, and we started talking about EOS, and we started talking about scaling up and gazelles and burn harnish. We started talking about all these things, and just had a fantastic conversation about our shared experiences around trying to grow an organization and try to define. One of the things I love about the way I define strategy, because and maybe this is a loose definition, but Glenn, when we first defined strategy, we had no idea what we were doing. But it's basically answering the questions that your team has that you don't even realize that they have, and you might not even realize you have. But when you answer them, it makes all the difference in the world. And so that's the kind of stuff that Glenn helps companies work through and think through and implement. And so anyway, we just really hit it off. And it's something that's been a huge benefit to our business. And so Glenn is bringing that kind of wisdom and expertise to this topic. And we're very much looking forward to hearing from Glenn. So Glenn, sorry for maybe the long introduction, but
no, that's great.
I think that's the kind of work you do, and I think it's sometimes what people don't realize that they really need if they're trying to take their organization to the next level. So take it away.
I agree. Yeah. Well, I remember our conversation really well. I remember meeting, and I remember like Nate, how do you know to ask such good questions? And I think I shared with you, and I was a CEO of my company, and we were a publicly traded company. We grew, and we kind of hit a point of we kind of seemed like I got stuck. And I look back now, and I know it was because we didn't have a world-class strategy. And I really, frankly, as a CEO, I didn't really understand strategy the way I do now. And strategy, to your point, is being able to answer those questions. And I think first and foremost of where are we going and why are we going there? And then really strategy is being choosing a place in your market that's undifferentiated. The best strategy, right, is like, you're not the best, you're the only. And people just can't help but to go and choose you for their needs if you've chosen the right client and you have the right product offerings and you offer them up the way they want it. Which, to your point, I think EOS we talked about, it's great on executing, but then really where are you going? So yeah, thanks for having me on today. And this is a little bit of I guess a reprise or some breakdown on an event that you and your team had hosted last November, right?
Something like that, maybe November, December timeframe. Yep.
Yeah, November, December. And it was kind of the thinking about AI and the crawl, walk, run. So I use that same kind of analogy to talk about the section I talked about then, where strategy and people meet. But I just really would, you and I really thinking like, let's just have another good conversation like we always do as we walk through this. And so I say this is like, people are like, oh, what's our AI strategy? It's like, well, AI is not the strategy. AI is a tool that should power your strategy. And I know you and I, we've talked about this. I'd love to hear you chime in. Many companies everybody's implementing AI, but they really have a foundation in place to do it. Or is it just kind of these, it's one-offs here and there, and everybody's doing it a different way. And I think for those reasons, we'll see a lot of projects don't meet the success threshold we expect them to have.
Yeah, and I think there was actually an article that was just published yesterday, Glenn. When we prepped for this article hadn't even been published, but it was a Fast Company article that talked about. It said 37 billion was spent on AI initiatives in 2025, but only 28% of employees say they know how to use it. And said only 7.5% have received anything close to like training around it. And it was really, and I don't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but there was even something that said many employees faked knowing about it because they didn't want to be criticized or potentially ridiculed for not adopting the solutions that were being put in place. So I think that's, yeah, right. I think that speaks to, I think the strategy. If you don't have the right strategy and realize that it's about implementing behavior change, not just implementing another tool. And I think that's where we've seen a lot of struggles. Individual people are using it, but that's not a company strategy, right? That's just individual user. How do you make it a company-wide impact? I think is really the challenge that we're seeing a lot of organizations face today.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely agree with you. One of the things, Nate, that we talked about last week was that the individual use, you just said it, the article said it,
Yeah.
it doesn't equal the organizational impact. And yeah, we got different people using. I see this with my clients. Like, I use chat, and I'm even like, okay, using the pro version, the free version, and you're the most basic thing of like, oh yeah, I'm talking about my company and I uploaded the spreadsheet. Yeah. Um, and so the real AI power, and this is what I'm going to talk about a little bit today, is that the cross-departmental workflows. It's that automation, and it's the shared solutions, because every company it's a cohesive enterprise. I'm going to talk about that a bit. And yeah, sometimes, right, you've got some power users within the organization, and to your point, you've got people who don't even, are faking it. And yeah, is your organization really implementing theirs? Is someone just using it for their job? So coming back to, and I know you can speak to this point really well because you're seeing it in a lot of your clients, right?
Yeah, I think that's where I feel like, in fact, I think even some conversations we've had, there's been, and I don't want to say overconfidence, because that maybe is the wrong way to describe it, but maybe overconfidence. It's
Mhm.
it's a feeling that because as an individual you're really leaning into it and you're learning how to use the different tools and how it can affect you and be more productive and maybe analyze spreadsheets or create PowerPoints.
Mhm.
There's a lot of cool stuff that it can do as an individual, and I think that maybe as people are getting more confident there, they're presuming that that same value that the individual is receiving is applicable to their team, their department, their organization. And that's just where we're really seeing a massive gap. Is it going from the
Mhm.
individual to how do we share this to a team and how do we apply it to workflows? And one of the other things we're seeing around that is that workflows that you had yesterday in a non-AI world might not be the same steps in an AI
Mhm.
workflow world. And
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
you might have to rethink your workflow as opposed to presuming you can just layer AI on top of an existing workflow. I think those are some of the things that we're seeing, is that we're seeing a lot of confidence in individual adoption. We're not seeing great adoption and implementation and ultimate
Mm.
ROI from
Yeah.
department or cross organization implementation and or workflow or automation. So
All
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Great.
I know it's a mouthful.
Perfect. No, but I'm perfect lead in. So, and one of the things I guess is a little foundational, Nate, but I'll let you speak to this because I know you know that. But same thing I work with my clients on is like, you've got to have the data, got to have it data, and it's got to be in ready, right, and it's got to
Mhm.
get into your AI.
Yeah, I think what we've seen, it's almost like an analogy that one of our consultants likes to use is it's if you're trying to organize your closet. And sometimes I think part of the problem is that for a long time, and you talk to nearly any organization over the last 20-ish years, and you ask them about their file server, and they're like, yeah, it's kind of a mess. There's a bunch of old stuff in there. And
Hmm.
like, I know where things in, and then once you've been with the organization a while, you know where to find the things you need, but AI doesn't know the difference. And so it's going to find the old stuff. It's going to find anything that you've got in there. It's going to reference, including if you have version A, version 1A, version 2A, or whatever, right? You have the different iterations.
Hmm.
If you don't have a good change management process and getting out old stuff, you're not going to get great results. And so one of our consultants likes to use a phrase like, when you're cleaning your closet, one of the best ways to do it is you pull everything out of the closet first, and then
Hmm.
you only put back the things that you really need, because it's not just about putting the data there. It's also about how the data might be used in a search and or how it might be leveraged by
Yeah.
AI. Because if you don't do that, garbage in, garbage out, just like we've always been told around data.
Yeah, that was a realization for me, was the fact that I was like, well, AI is smart enough to know, and it's really not. But it's
Mm-mm.
also, from a memory standpoint, it really doesn't have that much memory, and if it's accessing, right, if you've got data, if it's accessing it, it's not necessarily accessing everything in there and analyzing everything in there. Is that right?
Yeah, I think what I've seen, you can give it instructions and context, but if you're
Hmm.
feeding it files and you're saying reference this data, it's going
Yeah.
to reference the data. When we
Yeah.
were, in fact, one of the early tests when we were trying to build, we wanted to build an HR onboarding agent to help, like, not only for our team, but also for our clients. Like, how can you have an agent so that we have a new employee come on board and they can ask the agent questions like, where can I find our expense report policy? Where can I find our PTO policy? Those kind of things. And
Hmm.
when we were testing it, it was giving different answers back on some of the questions we were asking, and we realized that in the data that we told it to reference, we told the agent to reference, there were conflicting versions of an HR policy because we had an old one there that we hadn't removed. And so that's an example of what I mean, is that if you have those, when you're telling AI to reference a set of information, it doesn't know. It's presuming the information is accurate because you're telling it that this is the data that you should be referencing. So I think that's kind of stuff that's really starting to put pressure on processes that people, in some regards, you've never really had to worry about. Maybe you had an archive folder, but that archive folder is still available to AI. Well, now you have to think about permissioning that differently, or you have to think about partitioning the data differently, or change management process differently than what you've done before. So but it's also, I think the one thing I like about it, Glenn, is that, we've been talking with companies about this for a long time because it just creates a neater and tidier environment. But to some extent you're like, but it's, it's fine, right? It's working. But AI, if you're going to start implementing AI, it's going to start putting pressure on those things and creating a reason, because you have Stephen Coveyism. The end that I have in mind is I want to use AI better.
Right.
And in order to achieve that end, I gotta structure my data better and solve some of the data problems better.
Yep. Yeah. Great point. All right. So I took the kind of crawl, walk, run as it relates to AI and went back and said, well, really, from my perspective, the way we can best use AI is, again, not in a singular fashion, onesie twosies people, and we're using different levels, but understanding cohesively what it can do for our organization, and goes to the early point of that, creating workflows across the organization. And really, that, I think that's where AI really is, to me, is not different than what we can do, what we could do and should have done pre-AI. And the first one is really understanding. We talked about process. How does our business make money? So first is map that, understand that, then, but also at the same time assess it. Like where are those stuck points? Where do we have the pinch points? Where do we have the greatest value? Then really, do we have the right people? Right? Here's so many people say, oh, in the right people, right seats. Well, okay, do you have the right seats? Like that's the execute, mapping your processes and understanding what seats you really need for your company now and where you want to go, aiming strategically, but also having them to have the right people in those seats for that need today and also for the future, or planning for that, right? Your succession. And then using AI strategically to say, okay, where can we focus as an organization, putting these bets where we're going to get our best ROI, and having that planned out at a higher level within the company. That's
I think
where I see the best results. Oh, go ahead.
No, I would say there's a couple things that you mentioned there that resonate. One of them is, as we've been looking at the building your team part of it. Nearly every Fortune 500 company, if not every Fortune 500 company, are hiring one or more people to just focus on AI. Now, again, I know that we're majority of people, in fact, probably everyone that might be ever watching this now or in the future, is not a Fortune 500 company, right? So we're not, but I do try and say that I think there is the message that I think we're hearing, though, is that building your team is being intentional about it, right? And identifying, and whether it's not necessarily hiring someone new, partnering with somebody external to help you from a consultant perspective, or allocating time, at least part of an FTE's responsibility to, like, it's really trying to compartmentalize, and like, if it's not an important thing, and if you're not allocating time for it, whether it be an external party or an internal party, you're not going to make progress. Especially if you're trying to do something across your entire organization. You might be able to do it inside of a team if you're able to do that. If you're that power user that can really take that, you can do it. But otherwise, if you don't really have a plan of how you're going to drive it and maintain it over time, it'll be fits and starts, and then the ROI is going to be diminished.
Yeah. I love that you brought that point today, because hold that thought. We're going to talk about that in a second, about this siloed resources.
Yeah.
And I believe that siloed resources can often be more of a hindrance to the company as a whole than not, versus sharing that out across teams and across the company. I don't know if you're a fan of like Pat Lencioni and the 5 dysfunctions. He talked the pyramid, right? Starts with trust and ends in results. Well, so many people think it's not, and Pat would say this, it's not individual results, it's team
Team
results,
results. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
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 So one of the things I really like to do, looks like my font got a little messed up here, but is how do we plan for the AI investment? 'Cause certainly we should be investing in it, right? You talked about that, having the right people. We want to have the right technology. We want to have our governance set up. We want to have the data set up. But ultimately, people, we talk about how we make money, and so many of us believe our businesses are so unique and so different. And, Nate, you wouldn't believe how tough, some of my clients' businesses and versus yours, right? Yours is tough, right?
It is, but it's the same. It's the same as this, right?
Yeah.
It's basically the same.
Yeah,
Yep.
and so this is one of the first things I really encourage working with leadership teams and CEOs and say, look, let's map out how you make money. And I bet we can understand your business model. Well, you've got a customer, right? And it's hopefully we know who that ideal customer is, who your core customer is, right? They have a need, they have money to spend, you got to qualify that. Well, they need to be aware. So that's marketing. Then we need to draw them into a conversation, discovery, eventually come up with solution and contract. That's sales. We get the contract signed, and really we need to deliver the service or their product to them. And that's kind of operations is, hey, soup to nuts from that, accepting the order all the way to shipping it. And then we have our finance, which is really they need to keep track of all the dollars that finance our whole operation, right? But ultimately, and they also need to, most importantly, invoice and collect money,
That's right.
Yes. Which then it comes always, I love, if is this Alan Mills that said this, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash is king. And for anybody who's owned a small business and woke up and said, I don't know if I can make payroll this week, knows the value of that. Go ahead.
No, I agree with you. And I think I remember you bringing this up when we did our event, and really, really trying to make sure that you map it to this, right? It's not just about, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. And I use those words generically for a reason. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do.
Yep.
But if it's not intentional towards solving a problem that helps with these things on the screen, then you might be wasting your time, and you probably are wasting your time. Now, maybe there's a pilot and you're trying to learn and test, and that's different. But if you really want to be intentional and strategic about it, going through this exercise and mapping these things, and then trying to solve those problems is it's going to result the things you want as a team.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're doing these things right, then the most important, right, is customer success. Though this isn't customer service, this is the fact that we do things so well, we make the right promises, and we hit those promises, we achieve our brand guarantee, brand promise, right? The clients are so ecstatic with our service or our product that they're going to come back and buy more, and they're going to tell everyone they know about us.
Right. Yep.
And that's the secret to a great business. So, as you said, I always encourage, let's take a second first before we jump into where we're going to do AI. Let's assess where do we need it the most and where's going to pay us back. And I always start with a stoplight assessment. It's a red, yellow, green. There's only 3 colors on the stoplight. And we've got it laid out here a little bit kind of simplistically, but we've got this, right? So, anybody who's on here would encourage you to be thinking about your organization. And if you want to do this, and coincidentally, Nate, we do have a download worksheet that business leaders can take through. There's anybody in the business. And first thing we're going to do is say, well, who is singularly accountable? Who's leading that area? And then I use the ABC player. I really like this. I understand, there's different other ways to rate people, but I really like this ABC player. And to me, an A player is someone who lives our core values, and on most days they meet or maybe even exceed what's on their scorecard, right? Their measure of performance. So we've got 3 hypothetical names here for the leaders of these for this hypothetical organization. Let's call it a lower mid-market manufacturing firm, for example. All right. So for this one, let's just say, okay, we've ranked it, and boy, we've got red lights at marketing and sales. It's just not doing well. Operations is doing great. It's humming along. Finance is doing pretty well. It's a yellow. Could have some improvement. And our customer success seems to be a yellow. It's doing pretty well. Then we look at our leaders. We've got Sarah over marketing. She's a B player. Like some people might say it's a steady Eddie. That's pretty good. Mike, Mike's been here a long time, Nate. You'd love this guy. He is so loyal. He's been here a long time. People love him. He brings in donuts every Friday. But he's not hit. He hasn't hit his number in a couple of years.
Yeah,
C player, right? Carlos he's crushing it, man. The dude. He's newer in the organization, but he just rose up through the ranks. He gets it, wants it. He can do it. Jen's newer in the role too, but she's doing really well. I don't know. Payable accounts, receivables rather, are a little behind. They're kind of behind. Right. So there's that cash. And then, customer success, we don't really know. We think we get some good reviews, but we think people, we do a good job for people, but we don't really know for sure. We don't know what they're saying about us. So Nate, if you're looking at this hypothetical, would you have any thoughts just kind of looking at these two ratings we've got up here?
Yeah, I mean, there's some personnel. There's probably at least a personnel change,
Yeah.
and then there's some areas where we can probably improve execution by implementing solutions. I think the question that comes to mind, not knowing much more about this organization than hypothetically thrown out, is,
Sure.
If operations is in a green, but customer success is a yellow, then is there something that we could? If operations is already fine, humming along well, maybe there's some optimization could still be done there from a solution perspective,
Right.
because they probably have some finely tuned processes and execution, and they might be able to adapt to something easily. On the flip side, I could say, well, marketing and finance probably need some help. Maybe there's some areas for AI optimization in those areas potentially.
There you go. Yeah. And so if you had a let's call it a limited budget. But do any of your clients ever have unlimited budgets? No.
Yeah.
So you're already heading down the path. You're thinking about, well, if we're thinking about where AI could be helpful, then we may want to look here, right? Definitely. Yep. We need to talk about a personnel change there with Mike. Hey, great guy, but he'll be happier on another team, and then say, okay, how can we start optimizing this?
Mm-hmm.
As another aside, I've seen this in companies, and I don't say it's relatively common, but I see it. And generally what happens, because we'll revise this every quarter. And what we see is once we start turning that sales, marketing, getting it yellow to green, many times, what do you think happens to operations?
It starts going to yellow.
Yeah, right.
It's getting crushed a little bit. Yep.
Yeah, we were great when we didn't have to produce that many widgets, but now we're we're not used to that. And I think I liked your assessment too about our customer success. Hey, did we really? Were we getting? It was easy for us to get things out on time at a lower capacity, but now that we're under the gun, maybe we're delivering things late.
Mm-hmm.
So here we have it, and this is how I like to look at it. Nate, I'd be happy to hear how you might look at it.
Yeah.
Is saying exactly right. Okay. Before what needs to improve? How do we turn these functions green? And then I like to bucket them. How can we generate more cash in this area? Customer value, which is probably the most important, but also that operational efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes back to where when we're doing this, I really, really encourage companies to look at this as with all the leaders of the company, looking at this as one team. And with that goal of saying, how do we go customer to cash, the easiest, fastest way? And that goes back to your point before about, hey, do we have maybe operations really does have a great AI architect, someone who's in there and they're really fine-tuning the operations. Can we bring them up to this company level and have them start working on this,
other areas?
Other areas. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this, Nate? This one?
I love the simplicity of the breakdown, and I think that sometimes when you get I'm just relating to ourselves. I know sometimes we have organizational initiatives that we're working on, but like really tying it to these buckets. I love it. We haven't always done a good job of that. I mean, we have owners of it, so I can't think we're kind of naturally to some extent doing this, but we're not as being as deliberate about this. The other thing I think that this could uncover, which is a whole nother personnel exercise, but when you go through the A, B, or C player, Sometimes you might have a strong. We've seen this before. You have a strong player in say in one particular area, but they're not the optimizer of that area. They're a good, strong player, but their strength isn't necessarily optimizing that department or the team. So sometimes how do you support them? Maybe they're a great player, but they're not going to be the one that helps implement AI because that just is beyond their core competency. So I think to your comment of like, if you have some power users or players that are able to take that wisdom and if you take that core player and partner them together, they might be able to solve those problems together better than leaving a department lead head on their own.
Yeah, that's a great point, Nate. I love that. Yeah, perfect. So, which brings us to the next part, the people side, right? Okay, so we understand, and this is that ABC player. Some people talk about a 9 box. It does use 9 boxes, but it's different, and it's a different terminology. And when I was a CEO, talked about this. It's like, oh, they're an A player, which we meant someone's really a go getter, they're really a lot of gumption and inertia. And then, B players, we called them steady eddies. There was something like that. Like, you need the B players. People don't rock the boat, don't want to like just kind of come in, do their job. And I've really shifted that over time. And we've got on the worksheet that anyone can download, we've got that mapping it out too. And it really, the A player definition now that I adhere to is the one that they live the core values most of the time. No one's perfect. And they really, they're ahead on that performance. And this on the bottom, if you think of this ahead, behind, or carry, is just think about, okay, as you look at their performance, and they should have a tight job description, which I like to call a scorecard for a person. Scoreboard is for the company. That's the metrics. But it's something like, it's Nate. So you think about people on your team are coming like, are they kind of always like one step ahead of you? Like, hey, Nate, we should do these, right? You think about that versus Nate is saying, hey, I've got a great idea. I think we should do that. And they're like, yeah, I'll do that. And they get it executed, right? And then that carry, that's someone, it's just like, oh man, I have to meet with you 3 times before this gets done. I have to keep coming back and checking it. And I think we've all worked with those kinds of people. So to me, it's someone who goes that far right, and also the core values. They're the people like, hey, they're a my tech kind of person. We want more people like them.
Yeah, we look at this. Yeah, no, we look at this as well. This is in trying to understand. I think sometimes we don't always look at it probably as often as we should. But yeah, this is about helping our team be realistic and performance manage, right? Because it's as it goes to AI, it's hard to implement change with C players because you have to drag them. It's going to be that much harder to move along.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. The A players, I think those are the people you talk about, within organizations that turn out to be the power. They usually are. They're usually the people who are ahead, right, on AI usage. And the Bs, I think I've seen it. I don't know if you have, but it seems like the B players, they can use AI to kind of mask their maybe mediocre performance. I don't know. Sometimes like, hey, I came up with this big report, or it looks really great. Okay, well, tell me what it means. Well, it doesn't have that thought component.
What it made me also, this made me think of, I hadn't drawn this potential kind of connection or maybe a light association until now, but I remember Microsoft was presenting some data of a study they did, and it was about they were looking at a bell curve of adoption for change. And they said statistically about 15% of your organization are willing to lead the change and are okay with the uncertainty of change, and they're game for experimenting and trialing and figuring it out. And then you have about 70% of the organization that is like, well, just tell me how you want me to do it, and I'll do it. And then you have the lagging 15%, which is kicking and screaming and the naysayers of what's going on. And the message was like, don't let the lagging 15% dictate the other 85%. But also, if you got to find the right 15% on the front end who are willing to navigate the uncertainty of testing, trialing, changing to help define it for the other 70% that is and I don't know if that's an ABC player. I don't know.
Yeah,
There's probably some loose association to that. It would be my guess. Maybe
yeah.
not.
I agree. I think I even see that myself in change management, right? Because when I work with companies, it's because they want to grow. Grow implies change. Change and necessarily it's pain, right? No pain, no gain
Yeah.
in a sense. But yeah, there's always the people who are like, yes, this needs a change, and then there's the people who said it, they're actively behind the scenes, like, no, this sucks. We used to be such a family company, blah blah whatever. And I think to your point, you've got that set in the middle, and they can be swayed one way or the other. And so that's the really important part about understanding, okay, how do we take this and how do we communicate it? How do we get everyone on board? How do we have the culture? You have the right, because the more you do those things, the more I think you can adjust that 15% in across the bell curve, right? And bring your organization up forward.
Yeah.
It's tough,
Indeed.
right? People decisions are tough. So I've got some rules here. It's like A players, obviously, if we identify those, they should be the highest compensated people in that class, that level. You just want to love on them. If they're B players, you as a leader, you want to focus on coaching them up to A players. First of all, is ensure they understand the expectations, what we expect from them. And really, if we can't get them into that A player category in like 6 to 9 months, it's not going to work. That's, that might even be too long, 6 months max. Really, they're a C player. And then if it's a C player, like really that intense focus on, okay, we've got an issue here, and we then turn it around today, or they should be out of the organization within 90 days. And almost all the time, these are the same people as well who really aren't happy in our organization. It's just not a good fit for them.
Yeah. I think so. One of my colleagues, we were at a peer group meeting. Back in February, early February, and we were talking about performance management. And one of the comments was that like poor performers don't leave. And I think that definitely happens sometimes. And I've definitely experienced, multiple people, even in the last couple of years, where we chose to have a candid conversation because we knew that they're not as happy, candidly, in their role, because they're kind of existing as opposed to thriving. And so are we the bearers of bad news sometimes to say like it's not the right fit here moving forward? Sure. And does that take a hit, and is that frustrating and painful in the moment? But I actually had someone recently come back to me and say, you know what, you're right. I thank you for not letting me linger in this role where I know that I was wanting to make it work, but it wasn't the best fit for me. I wasn't as passionate. I wasn't as excited. It wasn't filling my bucket. But because change is hard. So anyway, I do think that I do agree with you that one of the subtle, when you have to make those kind of people decisions, one of the subtle things that I think I do try and have some peace with is A, have we communicated effectively right through it, so it's not a surprise, and B is that like I genuinely believe that, but we are not helping them by keeping them here because we're stealing them of time that they could be investing in a different career that could be more successful for them, and that's not fair for us to do that. It's on us to make sure that we're coaching, and sometimes that's coaching to a different position in a different organization. So it's very hard, and those are painful conversations, but I genuinely believe that they're the ones that it's if you want to be a true leader and help people on their path, that's part of the decision. That's part of the path too, is making those decisions.
It absolutely is. Yeah, Nate, I think the event you and I reconnected at was the Allied Executives. I think it was when Kim Scott spoke, right?
It was Kim Scott. That's right.
Radical candor.
And
that's right. What you just said is exactly. We have to care. Right, you have to care. At the same time, you need to have the candid conversations. It's for the good of the organization, because those of us who are leaders, we are there for the good of the organization. Yeah, that's great, excellent. And so this is an example of a client I've been working with for some time, and they're a very successful company. They're a luxury home builder. I think they've got about 65 people. And one of the things they came up with was a goal of like, look, we want to, because they build these big homes. I mean, this is an example of it. And these homes, when someone says, hey, I want to build a new home with you, it can take up to 4 years to complete it. Like, which is
It's crazy.
right mind blowing, and it's an obstacle for them from a sales perspective because so many people say, "Oh, that's just too long."
Yeah.
We'll find something that's already built and just maybe we'll renovate it or something.
Hmm.
So they took on as a company. They said, "Well, hey, our strategy is we want to be so radical within some change within our industry. We want to cut that dramatically, that build time, and use that as a strategic advantage," which I think is great. It's a challenging goal, and I was, the CEO was just, but he was skeptical that they could really do it. I mean, right, I set a lofty goal, but how are you
Hmm.
actually going to execute it? And one of the things that it was the whole leadership team that really thought about it, using both the tools we'd seen before, is we really did. They weren't quite executing as well as they could be as a team across that flow map that we looked at,
Hmm.
and also they didn't quite have the team that they needed. They didn't quite have the horsepower on that. And so what we really focused on was tightening up that execution, tightening up the A players. They're over 90. I think last time we measured was 91% A players within the organization, where that flow map is yellows and greens. It's going really
Hmm.
well. And then what we were able to do is once we hit say that is like that, use that to then start saying, okay, here's where we can use AI in a big way. And in both in the AI technology, but also in material technology. So they have a director of innovation. And so that director of innovation is kind of the power user you were talking about that is actually working cross-functional
Hmm.
and tying together this whole process, because they really did find the whole process just starts with their client education all the way through to finance and how they're actually billing and invoicing and collecting throughout the project to ensure that they're able to collapse that time. And
Hmm.
they've decreased it a lot already, and there's still more in the works.
That's very cool. I mean, that is a
Yeah.
significant problem. Like thinking about how long it takes, because it's also, you said the education. People don't know what they don't know, right? How often do you build a
Hmm.
house? Most people save once because they don't want to do it again once they've done it the first time.
Yeah, right.
But
I
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
And so we also talk about data, right? How many, the companies, so I think over 30 years old now. So they've built a lot of homes,
Hmm.
and all the data that they have, they've used various software, project
Hmm.
management,
Hmm.
right? Finance and the logs. So they have so much rich data that they're using to say, oh, here's where we typically run into problems. Here's
Yeah,
where our clients typically get bogged down.
yeah.
Right. Here's and so they can use that again to go back to say, well, what are the biggest pinch points? Where are we losing the most? Where can we gain the most?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, so as it relates to, so if they're trying to compete in the market of other
Hmm.
luxury home builders, and everyone's saying, oh, it's going to take us 4 years, it's going to take us 4 years, it's going to take us 4 years. And we're like, well, we can probably do it in a little over two.
Yeah.
Like, in the end, like the outcome could be the same, but you can get it done in, a third, 2/3 or 3/4 or half the time.
Yes.
That's a massive differentiator.
Exactly right. Which is a strategic differentiation
Right.
because most of them take about the same time. So it comes down to build quality, design, and price.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
right. And price is a big differentiator. Well, it seems like the house looks high quality. So if you take the differentiator of like, yeah, but we can do it. It's going to cost you a little bit more. It's going to be a premium, but you're going to have it in half the time than anybody else out there in the market.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I can make an
that's
argument that they might even be able to have a lower cost at half the time because they're not having
mhm.
to spread their labor over 4 years. They're able to do it, and like maybe, I don't know. Again, maybe it's
Yeah,
more time in the short, but yeah, I get it. That's for sure.
time is
Either way,
money.
it's a differentiator. That's right.
Yeah. Although from a business owner perspective, if you want to turn that around, could potentially be like, no, there is a premium for that
There's value.
because
Yeah.
there's value, right? And someone
Hmm.
would say, well, yeah, I can get to live in my house 2 years sooner. It's worth the extra money. So therefore, their margins then correspondingly that they can then reinvest or go back to
Hmm.
pay for the investments that allow this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Great example.
yeah. So again, I'll go back to this, right? Map and understand your execution, make sure you got the right people, the right team, and then that deploying it strategically. And then I love using this. So we're here in the Twin Cities, right, Nate, and the home of
Mm-hmm.
the Juicy Lucy. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times people are like, oh no, we want to be the best. We want to be the best in this, our market, whatever that might be, managed service providers. Like, you kind of like, okay, like, let's take that. Strategy is about what do you decide not to do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not saying we're going to have the best hamburger, but it's figuring out, because look, we've got McDonald's burger, we've got the, this, I don't know, $35, $50 Wagyu burger that, maybe get at a
Yeah.
premium steakhouse, white tablecloths. And then you've got the Juicy Lucy from Matt's, right, which is a dive bar that doesn't even accept credit cards, right? So
Or
you
the
think about
5-8 Club, because for those of you in the Twin Cities would argue Matt's and 5-8 go back and forth. By the way, I was just in Southern California, and folks across the country don't necessarily know what a Juicy Lucy is, but it's
Yes.
molten hot cheese in the middle, stuffed in the middle of a burger, which is incredibly
Yes.
amazing. But also you could sear your mouth if you don't be careful about eating one. But yeah, there's two restaurants in town that go back and forth saying who's the original. So we're not gonna solve that argument here.
We are
Glenn,
not.
for those locals that are listening.
Yep.
But yeah, no, it's an excellent point. McDonald's isn't gonna make a Juicy Lucy, so you win in different ways.
Nope. Yeah. Although I'll tell you what, what's the best hamburger? Well, if I'm driving in my SUV with my 4 screaming kids on the way to Chicago to visit our parents, and we need food. Juicy Lucy's not a question. We're not going to stop at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse for a Wagyu burger and white tablecloth, and right. No, McDonald's is the best burger for us at that point.
Choice. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so that's just a quick idea on strategy. It's not to be like it's the best burger, but it's like the riches. Vern Harsh said this? I think it was. I know it's in the book. But the riches are in the niches. If you can differentiate, in very narrow to be the only choice, that's when, if you go back to our home builder, you can command a premium. And ultimately, right, that's what we want to be able to do. We want to have very profitable businesses that deliver products that are so amazing to the right clients that they're happy to pay a premium.
Yeah. That burger better taste good, though. You know what I mean?
I know. So here it's lunchtime for us in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And Nate, this was a point that you and I talked about last week that I thought was really good. I'd love to hear you talk about this, because I think too, also this talks about using AI strategically. So we've mapped out, we understand where we want to make the investment. We understand we're getting the right people in place. We want to start making those investments. And it's not just, hey, let's fire up the latest, Claude, Chat, Copilot, type some stuff in, right? Talk about this, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think so. What we've found is a handful of things. One is that AI is not a ubiquitous solution for every role, or the same AI tool is not the ubiquitous solution for every role, right? So there might be functions that are more of a Claude, there might be more that are trying to be Copilot or GTP or Gemini or Nano Banana, depends on what you're doing. And so I think that's definitely one of the challenges that we see our clients facing. So first of all, just acknowledging that and recognizing that, I think, is important. So and I think that's some of the mistakes when Copilot first came out, and some organizations bought Copilot for everybody in the organization, but they didn't do any training. They didn't figure out if it was the right fit for the roles. They didn't and so it didn't. Most of them didn't go well, just like the data that we shared at the beginning of the conversation. So I think that's one of them. I think just acknowledging that. Two is that you don't have to do 100, or I'm just picking a random number, but a lot of initiatives. Pick 1, 2, or 3. Just pick a handful, right? Pick a couple that you can really work through that can work to fruition, and evaluate whether or not it was successful or not, and then go back and iterate. Because if you try, that's one of the data points that we found. I don't have the data off the top of my head, but I know that when we've been working on this and doing our own research and talking to different clients, that's one of the things we found, is that organizations are trying to take on too many initiatives that aren't focused. Again, they're not a strategy. They don't have a plan. They're just kind of shotgunning a bunch of stuff. And they're not realizing a lot of success. So I think trying to be more intentional about having a plan, and having a leader, having a way in which you're going to evaluate it, having a time frame in which you're going to do that, and narrowing down the quantity of initiatives that you're working on, I think are the things that we have found. That's probably one of the second ones. It's a big thing that we've seen. And the last one is, and it's relative to the crawl, walk, run concept we've been talking about this whole time, is that and this that we didn't originate that. We did. It's interesting. We thought about it. Feels like a crawl, walk, run kind of thing, and then we started looking around, and there's a lot of examples out there that were relative to AI that are talking crawl, walk, run. And I was actually talking to an executive of a company that's well over $1 billion in valuation revenue. I think in revenue, and it was a CMO of a company, and it's interesting. The question was posed like, give us some examples of AI tools that you're using. And this was last November. So we had our event, I think, end of November, early December last year, and we'd already defined it. And then I happened to have this conversation with this CMO, and he uses crawl, walk, run as an example. He started saying, well, we've got some of our solutions that are in the crawl phase, some of them are in the walk phase, and some of them are in the run phase. So that was interesting, right? That it's not just a sequence of events that you always take to full fruition. Sometimes you're trialing stuff here, you're trying stuff here, you're trying stuff here. And there's an example of one that we were even working on recently, where we found that we intentionally stopped at the walk phase because we're like, the run phase actually wasn't bringing value. The extra effort to get it to like some automated results, it actually was a lot of real work, and it wasn't bringing a lot of extra value from where we'd already achieved at the walk phase. And so we just said, we're just going to stop this initiative or this particular function at the walk phase. So I think as you're trying to put all this stuff together, I think those are some of the things we've seen, is that it's, narrow the quantity of initiatives that you're working on, realize that not the same AI tool is the same fit for every single person, every single function, and realize that you might have different initiatives in different stages that may never go all the way through to run. And that's okay. And you might have different phases of that over time. And so I think those are the things that we've seen. And the last thought I'll leave on that, I'm not sure what other things you have here, Glenn, but one of the last thoughts that I think, again, going back to a comment we made earlier, but it's worth reiterating, is that where we've seen organizations not be successful is it seems like today we're seeing a lot of organizations where they have a lot of individual contributors using individual AI solutions that are helping the individual be a better individual contributor. What we're not seeing, and what we're seeing the bigger gap, is the data site that you mentioned, but the data is holding them back, or they're not being able to implement across a department, across a team, or across the organization. And taking it to that next level is really where we've seen the biggest gaps today. Again, that's probably going to change tomorrow because that's how fast AI is going. But that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, Nate. Absolutely. Yeah, and really, it's just going back to, again, that sequence matters. And I love the point you made about doing more limited, maybe larger but focused initiatives, which then goes back to that key function flame. Like, okay, where can we get our biggest ROI, our biggest bang for the buck, and free up our entire business process the most? And then you just keep going back through that exercise. So we opened one thing up, right? What's the next one? What's the next one? What's the next one? And you just keep optimizing. And to your point, you learn along the way, and always looking. I love your example of like, yep, hey, you probably got 80%, 90% of the ROI right there in the walk phase. That's it. Let's move on to the next one.
We're good.
Yeah, perfect.
That was a surprise to us, by the way. But just as a side note, I love using that example now, because we thought we were going to go to the run phase, and we were trying and pushing and trying, and like it was like so much extra effort, and like the value was like it was actually diminishing the value that we were getting, the results that we were getting, versus stopping there. So it was like, oh, we can just stay right here and we're good. So it was a wild kind of epiphany, but I think it's very applicable to what we're seeing in the world right now.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, so if anybody is interested in getting these worksheets as a download, that's looking at this, you can, there's a barcode right here, scan code. But also I know, Nate, MyTech will have a link on your site so people can download that tool. It's on our site as well. Be able to download it. And I'm Glenn Dahl with Apex North Business Coaching. So it's apexnorthcoaching.com is our URL. And yeah, that's it for me. And I can't thank you, Nate, and your team enough. I love doing events with you and Taryn and Stephanie. and always really well run. And let's do more.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. And I'll tell you, for those of you who, when we years ago, it was probably 2017, 2018, when MyTech went through and actually defined our go-to-market strategy and engaged a coach like Glenn. It wasn't Glenn because I don't think I'd met Glenn at the time, but
Nope.
it was a coach like Glenn. And I'll tell you, it has made it's probably one of the top 5 best decisions we ever made was to engage a coach and help us solve that problem, because we kept hitting this point where we didn't know what we needed, but it ended up being we needed to have a strategy defined. And so it was great that we had a coach to do that. So if that's something where you're feeling that in your organization, or you're struggling to figure out how AI can work from a strategy perspective, I would strongly recommend reaching out to Glenn. He's got a lot of wisdom to share along those lines, and help you hopefully answer those questions that you don't even realize that your team has questions for, and they're looking for answers from you, and you might not have defined them. So that would be my sign off. But it's a wild world out there right now with AI, and it's changing rapidly. And my sign off will be, do something about it now. If you're not,
Yep.
You've probably been hearing this message since AI first came out, and you're hearing it at every conference you go to. But we are seeing massive changes, massive improvements, massive adoption. And if you don't start taking action as a business now, I genuinely believe a year from now, 2 years from now, you're going to be so far behind because of where AI is going, that you're gonna be remiss and regretful. And I don't want anyone to feel that way, especially as an entrepreneur when you've tried so hard to get your business to where it is today. So engage folks like Glenn. We're happy to help if you have AI questions.
Yep.
But take action now. Do something about it now for your future success.
Yeah, great point, Nate. I always, whenever I do anything like this and share, if anybody is watching and they hung through 50 minutes of us, is just, what's one takeaway? What's one thing you learned from today or thought, well, that's a cool idea? Write it down, give yourself a deadline, and just do it. Implement something.
Yeah. With that
All
said,
right.
thanks a lot,
so
everyone,
much.
for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, Glenn.
Yeah, thank you, Nate.